So we can start with the motivations, and we can take a few moments to generate and cultivate good intentions and motivation for being here. So we can reflect and contemplate, as long as our life is controlled by our afflictive emotions, the delusions. No matter what external situation that we might have. We will always be unhappy. We will always find complaint and problem in our life. We can never find lasting true inner peace, tranquility, and joy. Therefore, if we want to have inner peace, tranquility, and joy, regardless of whatever external conditions, then we need to reduce and overcome all those defilements, afflictive emotions. And not only ourselves, but in order to also help to overcome all the delusions and defilements of all sentient beings as well. We need to engage in a practice to overcome those defilements. By cultivating and fully developing those positive emotions or realizations that can act as antidotes towards those defilements. In order to practice, we need to learn how to practice and be reminded of the practice. For that very reason, that we are going to listen to the teachings, contemplate, reflect on them. And may our act of coming here together, listening to the teachings, become cause and condition, actualize our greatest potential, fully awakened state for the highest benefit of each and every sentient being. Okay.
Page 73. We'll do the first one just once and then read to the bottom of the 80. To the founder,
In the outer center, destroy the one gone beyond, the fourth destroy, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfecting knowledge and its good conduct, Sukata, knower of the world, supreme guides of human beings became teacher of gods and human beings. To you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subdued from the Shakya clan. I prostrate, make offering, and go for refuge. O Supreme, among you are born on this earth, you pass our spent strife, then said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I prostrate, with the pure bodies from supremely pure, wisdom oceans like a golden mountain, fame that blesses the three worlds. We know the best, Lord, to you I prostrate, with the supreme signs, face like color like gold, to you I prostrate. Thus free like you, the three worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the Founder having all understanding, the full of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to darkness, I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees from the wonder, the one path that sublime pure reality. To the Dharma that pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated, who also show the path to liberation, the holy faith qualified in realization, who are devoted to moral precept. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Humility, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all three ever devout home, to all worthy of respect, bow with the bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspects, with supreme pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous acts. Perform only virtuous acts. Subdue your mind only. This is the teachings of a star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through this may sentient being attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the four form, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the way of aging, sickness, and death. Yeah. To the Arya people gems. Thus did I hear one time. The Bhagan one was dwelling on the mass of Vulture Mountain in Raskiha, together with great community of monks and great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was observed in the concentrate on the categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva mass Arya Avalokeshwara looked upon the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahas Arya Avalokiteshvara. How should any son of the lineage train to practice the activities of profound perfection and wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mas Aryavalokiteshvara said this to a Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activities of profound perfection of wisdom should look upon like this correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates, also empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without character, produce unceaseless, not without stand, no deviation, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional fact, no consciousness. no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, so on up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction, aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Sharibuddha, therefore, because there is no attainment, Bodhisattva rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration, without fear. Having completely passed beyond it, there is the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly, completely awake to unsurprised, perfect, complete enlightenment in the reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurprised mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that totally pacifies all suffering, should be known as truth since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared. Taya tha om gade gade, para gade, para sam gade, bodhi soha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection and wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commanded the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokita Shora, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasa, Aryavalokishora, and those around the entirety, along with the worlds of God, human, asuras, and Gandhava, all overjoyed and highly praised, as spoken by the Bhagavan.
81, extensive dispelling of hindrance.
And those surrounded sentient beings go for refuge to the Buddha, go for refuge to the Dhamma, go for refuge to the Sangha. We prostrate to Great Mother Prasna Param, surrounded by all the children and by the assembled Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. By depending on my prostration to all of you, may this word to in the past they were dispelled by the reflecting on the profound meaning of the wisdom gone beyond and reside in the profound words and deities. In the same way, I also reflect on the profound meaning of great Mother Pasna Parami and recite the profound word in deities. May all diseases, spirit position, bad condition, all negative direction, that which happens due to the past karma, immediate condition. May all this be dispelled. May it be non-existent. May it be pacified.
98, the short mandala offering, it might be on the bottom of 97 and some of the 30.
Shibegi Chonshin Medo Tare Ralin Shi Yende Yembadi Sangye Shindu Mite Uvayi Dokun Namda Shinla Chepaisho Idang Guru Rana Mandalagam Tayami.
Refuge and bodhicitta, once in English, twice in Tibetan. We go for refuge
Until enlightened, alignment of Lama and Supreme Assembly. By the merit I create through listening to the Dhamma. May I become a Buddha in order to benefit all. Sangye chodan choge chonam la chanchu pato dan dagi choshe give sonam ki dola penche sangye doba. Sangye chodan choge chonam la chanchu pato dani dagi choshe give sonam ki Dola penche sangye duba. Kanje tuje nizone, to tanje pangbeche, tambe chune tenzebe, kodam de la cha tsalo. So, last week, as we went through the Lam-Rim, we talked about that. You know, as long as we are in samsara, as long as our life is driven by our contaminated karma, actions, and the delusions, no matter in which realm you are, we are still not free from free from all the sufferings. And even when there is no obvious pain and sufferings, but still the potential always there. It's like living on top of the very active volcano, not knowing when it can blast any moment, and because of that, you know, things could go wrong anytime, and due to that, then we could experience obvious pain, the suffering of pain, any times. And so with that understanding, then we need to cultivate, by that understanding, reflect and contemplate on that, then one need to cultivate a strong wish to not only free from the suffering of pain, but from the suffering of all change, and as well as suffering of all pervasive. You know, as one of the Panchen Lama said, you know, in terms of having a strong understanding the suffering of pain as suffering, even the animal understand that. Even the animal understands suffering of pain as suffering. Even they try to avoid that. Even they try to overcome that. You know. Then when it comes to suffering of change, you know, then certain practitioners, you know, understand that suffering of change is not true happiness and it's nature of suffering, and so they are not attached to that, and so therefore they are willing to give all these samsaric pleasures. They are renounce those samsaric pleasures, and by relying on very basic survival, you know, without anything, they live in the mountains and doing meditations and that, but still they have not really understood the all-pervasive suffering as a sufferings, and therefore they aspire to have a rebirth in such as the peak of the samsara, the God realms, you know, as that, seeing that as a ultimate kind of place to be, state to be, and then Buddha explained even those states, as we mentioned, are still in samsara, still. Even though they don't have suffering of pain, suffering of change, but still they have suffering of all pervasive. And so therefore still they are in samsara, and so therefore then the sense of understanding the suffering of all pervasive as a suffering, and then cultivating a strong wish to free from that is the uniqueness of the Buddha's teachings, and that is what we should really inspire to develop. And so and the reason why we are in this cyclic existence of samsara and the suffering that comes in cyclic existence is because of our own contaminated actions and defilements, delusions, afflicted emotions. And among those two, even though both of them are cause for our state of suffering and cyclic existence, but the main cause is those afflicted emotions among those two. And so I think we are there where we left last. So in page number 106, and so where it says it's the second. So identification of mental affliction. So that is the second point. This has 3 points: the actual identification of mental afflictions and the stage by which they arise, and then the third one, the disadvantage of mental afflictions. And then in terms of the actual identification of mental afflictions or defilement or delusion, whatever you translate, the first has 10 points. So here explaining the 10 different defilement or mental afflictions. And first is the attachment or desire, strong attachment, desire, craving, different translations that you find. And so observe, so, that kind of attachments, see attractive, pleasant, beautiful objects, whether it is external or internal objects. So the object of that attachment can be external or internal. And so it see, and then it focused in that way, and is subsequently attached to it. And so you see that kind of attribute in that objects, pleasant, beautiness, attractive, and then your mind is kind of observe into it. Your mind is kind of fixed into it, to the objects. And to illustrate, just as oil that had penetrated in the clothes is hard to remove, desire clinging to its objects and intensifying, also separate from the object. That object is difficult. So just as when a drop of oil is, when you drop a drop of oil on the clothes, so it penetrates and it's very difficult to clean it up, unlike like other dust. And same way, when our attachments focus on that kind of external, internal, attractive objects, then it's kind of penetrated and it clings and grabs on that object. And when there is strongly grasping and clinging very tightly to that object, then it becomes very difficult for that mind to let it go, the object, and the mind to be separated from that object. Anger, the second, is a hostile attitude. So it's a very harsh mental attitude, very harsh, very tough mental attitude. An unruly mind, upon observing basis of suffering, such as suffering beings, So being focused or the basis of suffering, such as maybe it's a sentient being itself, or the suffering, the object, or the object due to certain weapons that harms, and others, thorns and so forth, are different objects that intend to inflict harm to others. So by encountering, either it is a suffering or difficult situations or sentient beings, whatever objects that, and encounter that object, and then it appears as a very unpleasant, very bad, something negative, and then the mind kind of, the anger mind kind of focus on that negativities of the objects. The mind focus on that negativity object. On the basis of that, then it develops a sense of harmful attitude, wanting to inflict and harm others. That kind of intention leads to that kind of, and so that is the anger towards those objects, wanting to distance from those objects, wanting to destroy that object, wanting to harm the objects. And the pride, based on the view of down story collections, that will come later, what that means. Basically, normally it is the fundamental ignorance. Pride is pop-up mind that upon observing one's external or internal level of qualities, engage them with aspect of superiority. And so on the basis of that fundamental ignorance, then there is sense of thinking, whether it is external quality, internal qualities, internal quality, maybe we think maybe, I'm more handsome, beautiful, think maybe I have more knowledge, maybe you think I'm more, better persons, and with that kind of, then you feel superiority than others. You feel others more as inferior and yourself as superiority, inflated and pop up by that, or due to other external objects, maybe because of our wealth, because of our status, and so forth, our fame and so forth. Again, we might feel we are more superior than others, and that and sense of looking down others, sense of looking down others with the inferior, and so that is, so it's being inflated, but more quality. When you have pride, it's inflating more quality than actually there is, you might have some basis a little bit, but yes.
Can this also apply to our negative aspects, feeling that we are the worst in the world? The stupidest or the ugliest or the worst practitioner? Is that also a type of pride?
I don't think that would be probably pride. That might be more of low self-esteem. Other aspect of negative emotions. But pride, even though they describe 7 different kind of pride, and in those pride, even some of the pride, you think I'm not as good as that person, but I'm better than this person, not necessarily feeling you are supreme among all of them. Sometimes we feel that, but sometimes the pride can be, there are other kind of pride where, I'm not as greatest, but then I'm better than this person, and you feel you are superior than that person, and that kind of things. So there are 7 different level of pride that they explain. Yeah. So ignorance is afflicted, not knowing, not having the knowledge or not knowing due to the awareness that is unclear with regard to the nature of the Four Truths. So here, not knowing and not being aware and the mode of existence of such as Four Truths, the karma, action, and effect, and the three jewels. Not knowing, being ignorant, unclear, doubt. Upon observing those three objects, the Four Truths and so forth, the doubt think, do they exist? Do they not exist? Are they or are they not? So three objects such as the Four Truths, the karma, the action and effect, and the three jewels, doubting whether there is a Four Truths or not, and doubting whether there is a three jewels or not, doubting whether there is karma or not, or so not being totally certainty. Your mind is not totally certainty, but your mind is kind of too, and so that is doubt. And again, generally speaking, I guess maybe we can talk about two types of doubt. There can be a positive doubt and negative doubt. And here is talking about the negative doubt, that is the afflictive emotions. The positive doubt lead you to explore more and try to understand more better. You have doubt what it is, and then it encourages you to investigate, analyze more. And through investigating and analyzing more, you are able to find the truth more better. And sometimes we have certain doubt, and then that stop you from exploring any further. Do you get it? Because you have certain doubt, and then now you think, oh, it's garbage. It's superstition, it's useless. So instead of investigating, analyzing further to find what is truth or not, based on reasoning and all that, at the very beginning you have some doubt, and then that kind of, because of your doubt, then it doesn't lead you to further, to find further investigation, analyzing, and to find the truth, And so that kind of doubt here, I think, generally, I think we have to kind of differentiate two kinds of doubt. And here we're talking about that, the negative doubt. The view of down-story collections and afflicted intelligence that observe the appropriate aggregates. So the collection of aggregates, the five aggregates, the collection of five aggregates, such as our body, our feeling, our discrimination mind, our compositional mind, and our consciousness, and view them as a self, or belonging to self, thinking, I or mine, So there's a sense of, first there's feeling of I, and on the basis of that, then there is sense of mind, mind, such as my body, my mind, and my experience, so forth. On the basis of that feeling, then we started to have clinging and grasping to the sense of I or the self, as well as clinging and grasping to the sense of my, grasping and clinging to my body, my mind, and my experience, and so forth, like that. Here, down-story means, so why they use this word down-story collections, the reason why it they use this is, there is some meaning. So here, down-story means impermanence, okay? And collections, meaning many, depending on many causes and conditions. So the best that is view is mere impermanent and manifold. So to kind of to understand just by word itself, when you hear dance story collections, just by that, then we understand these 5 aggregates are impermanent and dependent arising by depending on many other parts, cause and conditions, to understand that. Okay, just by the word itself, by using that to understand the self and the basis of the self, the aggregates are impermanent as well as dependent arisings, depending on many parts. And so therefore, it is negating some of the concept of permanent self that was there in some of the school of the thoughts. And so they were, in order to indicate there is no permanent unitary persons. So to indicate there is no permanent, partless persons, it is given the name. For that reason, it is given the name, the view of down story collection, the reason why they use this particular term, the down story collection. It has a reason why they use this term, for that. The view holding extreme. The view holding an extreme is afflicted intelligence, which observing that self apprehended by the view of down story collections. So that kind of the self inherently or independent arising self, inherent in self, that is apprehended with the view of down story collections, view it as a permanent and eternal, or view it as being annihilated without being reborn from this existing futures. So basically, apprehending or grasping two extreme. One extreme either as permanent, the one extreme that is not continue from life after life. The mind is that the aggregates of mind that or self does not continue from one extreme, one life to another life. So it either permanent or either that. So basically, either way, holding one of the extreme view. The view holding that view is to be best, is an afflicted intelligence that observe any of the 3 views of down story collections, and the view holding to extreme, or a wrong view, which will come later, and the aggregates of the person holding the view through which the view arises and hold the view to be best. So holding those views, those mistaken views as best view, and so that is the view holding ethic and ascetic practice to be best. The view holding best is the afflicted intelligence that observe ethics of giving, of immorality, and ascetic practice that sets certain dress, code, manners, and bodily and verbally behavior, as well as the aggregate through which the view arises, and view them as purifying bad actions, liberating from mental afflictions, and definitely releasing one from cyclic existence. So it is saying, in some of the, again, in some other schools, there's a belief, certain practice as a salvations, as a way to achieve liberations, as a way, and such a from Buddhist point of view, maybe they are not a correct ethical view, but from their point of view, that is what they view, such as, by beating up yourself bodily, that you purify your negative negative karma, and that lead to the liberations, beating up yourself body, jumping into the fire, walking on the nails, and so forth, thinking those are the ethical discipline that will lead you to the liberations, that will lead you to free from the cycle existing, believing that those are the way to purify the negative karma. So So Buddha said those are not the, and believing those are the best ethic and best practice. And so here it's saying that is the wrong. And the wrong view is the afflicted intelligence that deprecates saying that past and future lives. So saying, there is no past and future life, there is no actions and its effect of the karma, and like they do not exist, or superimpose the apprehension in Ishvara at fundamental natures, and like those as the cause of sentient beings. And then, certain schools, non-Buddhist school, believing that the Ishvara is the creator of everything, creator of the world, creator of the sentient beings, creator of all sentient beings, experience and so forth. Or in some other school, they don't believe that, but then they believe there is something that called fundamental nature, which has 25 different qualities, and that being the basis of everything, creations of the world, creation of the sentient beings, creation of experience, everything. And so that from Buddhist point of view, those are wrong views. Those are the mental afflictions as identified from the common perspective of higher, such as the higher, the school of the Mahayana schools, such as Mind-Only school and Madhyamika school, or low tenet system, which are the Babasika and Sotantrikas. The Prasangika Madhyamika system will be explained below, and then Prasangika has some unique explanation of subtle delusions or defilement, and there is saying, Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that he's going to explain that later, but here he's going to explain more those who are common to all of that. And the unique of the Prasangika, he said he's going to explain later. So first, I think maybe if we go, before we go further, one, in what is described or defined as a afflictive emotions or defilement or delusions is define a mental state when that arises within the persons that give, when that arises strongly within the sentient beings, then that disturbs the sentient being's mind. It dilutes sentient being's mind, and it takes away the peace in the mind, the peace of the mind. And so any mental factors, any mental state, when it arises and then that disturb your mind, destroy your peace in the mind, and that dilute your mind, is described as afflictive emotions or defilements or delusions. And so, and then it will come, they are like described, as I mentioned, 6 root delusion, 20 secondary delusions in Buddhist studies. I don't know whether all the delusions are actually included. Maybe there might be other delusions who are not included in that as well. I'm not sure. It seems according to different cultures, different mental states seems to develop, and according to the maybe time as well, with the change of culture, sometime maybe new state of mind which has not before there could new mental state or feeling, emotions could develop. You know, I'm not 100% sure, but so anyway, and if we really check it, if we analyze it, whether it's strong, when you have strong anger, you know, it's very clear. It's very clear your mind is disturbed. It's very clear whatever mental peace you had before is gone in that moment. It destroyed that. It's clear that mind dilutes the other state of mind. You know, it dilutes your mind in a way that our mind becomes more blind. You know, when you are in a strong state of anger, your mind becomes more like blind. You cannot see things properly. You cannot make your judgment properly. You cannot use your reasoning properly. And that is how your mind is being diluted by that. And same when we have strong craving, strong desire, strong attachment, it has similar effect in your mind. When you have strong craving, strong attachment, strong desire, your mind is disturbed. There's no stability in your mind, you know. Your mind keep on going, wanting that object, you know. You go to a shopping mall and you saw something very beautiful, very nice, which you really wanted, you know. And so you so wanted, so you have strong craving and desire that you wanted, that you feel like this is what I need. If I get this, it will make me my life much more easier, convenience, happy. And then when you have that strong mind, you cannot focus. Your mind keep on going, thinking about that object. Do you get it? Your mind keep on going to that object. That's how your mind is disturbed. That's how before your mind is more calm, peace, stable. Now your mind is kind of so active with just thinking and wanting that and thinking how I should get it, how I can get it, and all these thoughts, you know, and then you don't have that tranquility, peace anymore. And also you dilute when you have the strong attachments. Again, you know, you become blinded. Your mind becomes blinded due to that strong attachments. That is how it gets diluted. And that has same effect if we observe when we have a strong jealousy, when we have a strong pride. It has similar effect on your mind. All of those delusions have that kind of effect when those afflictive emotions, when they arise very strongly. We also have to understand those defilements or delusions or afflictive emotions, you know, are not in the nature of our mind, and therefore they can be overcome. I think that is another very important to realize that, understand that. I think sometimes, especially in certain culture or in certain places where people seems to kind of believe that, such as anger or whatever those emotions that, you know, whether you are strong, if someone has strong anger, if someone has strong attachment, if someone has strong pride, jealousy, whatever, or any of those negative emotions. Seeing that is kind of natural, you know, and that is nature of that person's mind. From Buddhist point of view, it's not. The basic nature of your mind is different from those defilements, those delusions. So those defilements, those delusions can be separated from your basic state of your natural mind. That is something not only that, sometimes, you know, I think in modern, I think sometimes when we, you know, in some, sometimes I hear, you know, sometimes when when you teach how to be self-compassion, or maybe you know, certain level of mindfulness. Sometimes you see certain saying, you know, seeing it as your basic nature, and it is okay to be that. I think maybe if you explain that for someone who is feeling so bad about themselves because of that, maybe it might help them to feel a little bit, I'm not so bad to a certain level, but in the end you have to say it's a bad. You know, it's like you can't say a murderer, it's good to be okay, it's okay to be a murderer, you know. Do you get it? It's going to destroy their life and others' life. And therefore, because you have to be compassionate yourself, therefore, you have to be okay, and being a murderer, and that is okay. You know, in some, it can be helpful at the very beginning. It is lead in a skillful way. Someone who is feeling so bad about to get out of that state, and then you have to lead them when they are more feeling better. Then you have to lead them why those are not healthy, and that way of thinking, that way of behavior is not healthy, and that they should change it, and that they can be changed. It's not that they should change it, which cannot be changed, but it is something they can change it. Because all this behavior that come through that kind of defilement, emotions, because those emotions can be overcome. And because those destructive emotions can overcome, any unhealthy and harmful behavior that comes through that negative emotion can be also overcome and can be changed. Is the window open? Maybe do you want to open? I think so. Yeah, I open upstairs. Yeah. And without going much detail, you know, the explanation that you have heard many times with the different examples, you know, the basic nature of our mind is like the clear blue sky, and the delusion are like the clouds, you know, temporary, and therefore it can be clear. The delusion, the clouds of the delusion can be overcome and clear it, or the nature of the clear nature of the water is like the basic nature of the mind, whereas in the delusion are the dirts, the muds in that, And therefore, they are temporary. Since they are temporary, it can be also clear, and then you can have a clarity, you can see the clarity of the water after being clean of all these dirts within the water. And even in our experience, we can see, to very small levels, sometimes we are angry due to certain cause and conditions. But sometimes due to certain cause and condition, instead of anger, we have a deep love and compassion. Certain time, instead of anger, we have a deep state of love and compassion. What it shows, if the anger is in the nature of our mind, as long as the mind is there, it should be there all the time. But with our own small experience, we experience in that state when we have strong, deep love and compassion, the mind is there, but anger is not there. And all that shows those defilements, those delusions can be overcome, As I was explaining about, whether it's anger, whether it's attachment, pride, jealousy, all of those defilements, how they are diluted, how it dilutes our minds, it's clear. It's clear. When we have strong anger towards someone, it's hard to see any good quality in that person. And I think maybe you all have someone example of that at the moment. It's hard to see any positive qualities. On the other hand, when you are so attached to something, someone, any objects, whether it's sentient beings or non-sentient beings, again, when you have so strong attachment to that, it is hard to see any faults in that object. It's hard to see any faults, defect in that object. Yes?
Isn't anger a form of attachment?
Beg your pardon?
Isn't anger a form of attachment?
I wouldn't say anger is form of attachment, but definitely anger arises from attachment most of the time. Definitely, a lot of the time, the anger arises from the attachments. But the mental state itself is a different mental state, mental factors and mental states. And so we can see, and that again we can see, when you are not so much angry, when your mind is more calm, relaxed, when you see things, even though you might see certain unpleasant qualities, negative quality in that, but you might not see as bad, as negative as when you have strong anger. And I think probably we all have some experience with that. And it's the same with the attachment, when you have less strong attachments, when your mind is more calm, peaceful, and undisturbed attachments, and when you see to the objects, the way you see the objects, and when you have strong attachment, and when you see object, you can see the differences, When you have strong attachment, you see more pleasant, more beautiness, more goodness than actually there is. So your mind is exaggerating. Your attachment exaggerates the qualities into the objects. Thereby, being far away from the reality. On the other hand, also same with anger. It also exaggerates the more negative qualities of the objects than actually there is. In that way, that is how those all others, and how it dilutes and how it blinds our mind, and how it kind of takes our mind further from the reality. And as I mentioned, pride has same in that kind of functioning. So that is where I was saying that important to recognize and understand those defilements or afflicted emotion can be minimized, can be reduced, and can be overcome eventually. To have that kind of convictions is important. If you don't have strong conviction in that, then your practice might not be strong. If you have strong convictions that they can be overcome, then you have more stronger practice because of your convictions, and you are willing to for more effort. And because this is something, sometimes it bothers us. Sometimes we feel, delusion can be overcome, because it seems not so easy to us, We feel sometimes, we have met the Dharma for a long time, we have been practicing for a while, and still feel nothing has changed. Still feel we are still angry, we are still attachment, we still are all of that, and it seems sometimes, and sometimes we wonder whether, we might wonder that whether they can be really overcome, then when you started to caution that, doubt and caution that, then your practice started to become more weaker, Then you don't have the sense, some level of the enthusiasm, But one of the things that we have to also recognize is, we are we have to understand, the battle with the internal enemy of the delusions is going to be long, We are dealing with something that has control and have that from the beginner's lifetime. Just imagine, even some of the best, very simple behavior habits, physical habitual patterns that we have developed in our life for last maybe 10, 20 years. And we see that is such behaviors, not that we want to change it, it's not easy to change. Even a physical behavior that has developed only over a few years. Here we are talking about mental behavior, certain pattern that we have developed from the countless time that way. And so trying to change that kind of mental attitude is going to take a lot of effort and time. And we shouldn't expect him to just transform immediately like that, And sometimes the change happens very subtle way. and you wouldn't even notice sometime, you know. You wouldn't notice that sometime. I have a friend, you know, that he has a very interesting story of his life, but I don't think I need to go in all of that, you know. Someone, yeah, who was in army, parachute jumper, that, and then who became a police in Baltimore, and then who became a undercover 2 years with the drug dealers, and then while he was and then teaching at a night time at a high school, and also studying to become a lawyer while he was doing full-time job. And he became a lawyer, and not only a lawyer, successful lawyer, and he has his own business of law. And then at the age of 55, he had a stroke, and everything changed, you know. Everything changed after the stroke. The stroke was so bad that, you know, of course, memory, everything's, what he thinks, there's a disconnection between his thinking and his speech. When you go to a restaurant, he orders something, he wants to order something, but in speech it comes something else. So bad he had to point with the finger to the menu, because he cannot say it. And anyway, and because of that, he became kind of depressed, frustrated, and all of that. He became kind of more angry. And because of that, his wife, children left him because they felt he was not safe to be around for the child. So he lost his business, he lost his family, and he lost his ability, everything, you know. So anyway, so he went to a Mayo Clinic, and then they told him that the brain damage that is done can be recovered, you know, with certain, over the time, with certain exercise and that. So they told him, instead of doing with the right hand brushing, he have to do left hand brushing now. Everything he have to change for brain to kind of work certain way. Lifestyle, everything has to change. And also one of the things they told him to study, something that he had not studied before, to challenge his brain. So he said he started to study Buddhism because he had never kind of studied that. And his intention was to come to recover him fully, so he can go back to his business. That's what he wanted it. Again, started as a lawyer and started that he had that. So I think he, you know, and so he keep on studying by himself, you know, reading so many books. And then I think a few years ago, he came to the group, you know, in his house. So again, he came to the teachings sometimes, not very regularly, but I think he studied by himself a lot. But he never had, he never studied as his path. He just wanted to study it to train his brain and recover from that, so that he can go back, you know. And then he noticed interesting things, you know. His dog passed, he has a dog, and his dog died a couple of years ago. And when the dog died, the first thing that came in his mind, he wished the dog to have a good life or better rebirth. he was shocked. He said he was shocked with himself. What is happening here? But of course, it is a positive thought, wishing the animal or any beings to have a better, peaceful, better life. I think there's nothing bad about it. It's positive. But because he wasn't expecting that, he was kind of shocked. But at the same time, I think he started to like that. And now I think he's more committed as a path than just training his brain. And so I'm giving a just example of just through study, even just through studies, even though you didn't have the intention to that, how it can have a subtle changes like that. Do you get it? The subtle changes that happens in that way. And so therefore definitely our practice, meditations on loving kindness, compassion, and trying to overcome those defilement, the delusion, even though they don't go totally away immediately, but there is on subtle level, there is some positive results happening there. And that is something that we have to keep in our mind and remind ourselves. And also I have many other friends around the world where they didn't see change in themselves, but their family saw them change. Because it was subtle, so change was so subtle, so they didn't notice themselves. But then I have a friend, another Luca, and he said, I met him first time when I went there. It was his first time he came to the teachings in Finland. And then after that, I think he started to study. And after 2 years, I met. He said he didn't so much change himself, but his children saw the changes. His children started to say to him, Daddy, you don't shout and yell as much as you used to do. They noticed that he has become more calm and more calm, more patience, even though he didn't notice himself that, but the children noticed that. And so for like that, there are many that I heard from many that where they might not see change themselves because it's so subtle that, So all of that, what I'm saying with all of that, what it shows, what it says is that those defilements can be minimized, can be reduced, and eventually can be overcome. And I mean, His Holiness Dalai Lama says, of course, even from ordinary point of view, he says, because of his understanding of little realization of emptiness, hardly any delusion arises. Hardly any delusion arises. And he explained that wasn't the case when he was young. He has a lot of story about that. Again, he said, no. He shared a story of his anger, many stories. When he was young, one time he said he has a clock, watch. And it was not running. So because he liked to play with them, so he unscrewed them and opened them so he can fix it, He was trying to fix it, he couldn't fix it after some time, and he banged. He banged many times. But it didn't get, the things didn't get better, it made more worse. So he had to fix more, And he also shared about a story. He was memorizing one of the texts, and he said there was one line he struggled, one line he couldn't memorize, and he got very annoyed, frustrated, and angry, So he started to scratch the letter, the letter off. He started to scratch it, the whole line that he couldn't. The way he was struggling to memorize, you know. It's funny stories, but of course, again, he's talking from more kind of ordinary point of views and with humbleness and humility. But so even from that, if we look from even from the normal point of view, he wasn't as he is not as patient and as he is now. It is that it's not that he didn't have a issue with anger when he was young, and she has many stories like that. But over the time, he started to practice, and through the practice, then he has reached that point where he hardly have any delusion arising now. And sometimes he says, you know, sometimes a spark of frustration can arise. He says sometimes when a lot of the Tibetan people who have experienced so much suffering and pain in Tibet, and they come out of that, and when they share all their stories and what they went through and all of that, sometimes there might be a spark of kind of frustrations, you know, like that. But then it's just spark, it doesn't last, it's just a moment and it just go away, you can let it go like that. And to be able to reach that, I mean, even from that point of view, you know, what I'm trying to explain is that through the practice, the delusion can be reduced, minimized, and overcome. That is something that that the belief and conviction that we need to have through with that kind of stories. And it's not just a made-up story, but someone's own personal experiences. And then with our own experiences, you know, there are certain things maybe which used to bother you a lot, but now maybe it still bother you, but not as much as before. You know, that means you have made some progress. And we should be happy to see that. I mean, I've also seen others, friends, you know, at least two of them who came to Buddhism because they have an issue with anger. The anger was so bad that their friend didn't want him to come to their gathering anymore, because every time they gather, because of his anger, he messed up everything, and they said, we can't take it anymore, and you can't. And so then he decided, you know, he has something issue that he need to deal, and so he was searching for something to find solution for that, and that is how he came to the Dharma. And of course, like us, he still have sometimes moments of anger, frustrations, you know, but nothing like that he used to be, and so he doesn't have that same level of the problem that he used to have, you know. And so that is progress. That's huge progress. Huge progress. That's ruining his life and ruining his friends' life, family lives. Now it's not doing that. And with all of that, what we know is if we do through the effort and practice, definitely those negative emotions or afflictive emotions can be minimized, reduced, and overcome. And I think that is something that we need to keep in mind. Then the second, if the so the stages by which mental affliction arises, that is the second outline. If the view of non-story collection, ignorance, are posited as distinct, separate, the stage in some schools, they see both as same. In some school they see it differently. So in others, in a school, if you posit they are separate and distinct, then the stage of how the mental affliction arise must be understood for following manner. For instance, with regard to a coil rope, once darkness has fallen in some extent, if the mode of abundance of the rope is not clear, a mind that apprehends a snake arises. Likewise, through the darkness of ignorance, obscuring the clear mode of abundance of the aggregate, the delusion regarding the aggregate as a self arises, and from that other mental afflictions arises. So, this is the classical kind of example about the coil and snake, like a rope, coil of rope, which is kind of in the color like a snake, a little bit of color like a snake, and shape, and it is round like a snake kind of rope, what do you call, coil like that, and then it's dim, dark, little bit, and so especially maybe in a place where maybe there's more snake like that, and someone come and suddenly you think there is a snake, and the fear arises on believing that there is the snake. So first, there is the unclarity because of the darkness and the dimness. It's not so clear to see that so clear, and because of that unclear darkness, lead you to believe that it was snake. To believe that it was snake, and to apprehend or misapprehend, however, it as being a snake, the rope as being a snake. Then on the basis of that feeling this is snake, then fear arises. Okay, that is how the level of how it arises. Same way when those the ignorance and the collective down story is in separate. Then first there is the ignorance that is unclear about the mode of reality of the self and other phenomena. Okay, because it's ignorance and unclear about the reality of the self and others, then next there is a grasping of the aggregate as being the self. Okay, there's a grasping of the aggregates as being independent or inherently existing self. On the basis of grasping or believing that aggregates to be an inherently or independently existing self, on the basis of that, then attachment to that self and aggregate arises, and other negative emotions arise. So that is how, in terms of sequences, how one state of the mental state lead to another level of mental state, and then those different levels of afflictive emotions. If those two are posited as the same in Mahayana or in most of the higher schools, tenets, they are as the same, ignorance or transcendental collections view being as the same. So if those two are posited as the same, the view of transcendental collection itself is the root of mental afflictions, because in those schools, the fundamental ignorance is the root of all afflictive emotions. Just as we see in the 12 link, where it starts, the first fundamental ignorance, then the actions, then the consciousness, then the name and form, and all this 12 links we start. Also, if you see in the Four Noble Truths, within that the wheel of the life, in the middle there is the peak that symbolizes the ignorance, and from the mouth of pig you see the bird and the snake. that symbolize the birds symbolizing the attachments, and the snake symbolizing the anger. And so coming from the mouth, both of them coming from the mouth of the fig, symbolize both attachments and anger arising from that fundamental ignorance. Yes, please.
Would the fundamental ignorance be the same as self-grasping?
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, yeah. Mm. So I guess sometimes I forget the questions to repeat, because people who are listening, they want me to repeat the questions. Yeah, the question was, is the fundamental ignorance same as the self-grasping? And so I said it is, yes. Then the next, how, yeah. In fact, when the view of downstream collection apprehends itself, as distinctions are made between self and others. So, you know, first there's a sense of feeling of independent or inherent existing self. Not only there's a feeling, then there is a grasping of independent or inherent existing self. On the basis of that, then there is a sense of others, feeling of others, self and others. Okay? And then grasping of others on the basis of that. Once that is made, you know, once that kind of distance and gap is created, self and others, in that way, you know, attachment to one's own side, you know, attachment to oneself, or one's aggregates, one's own side arises. And hatred for other sides, such as enemy, you know, and enemy side arises. So that is how anger and attachment arises on the basis of that kind of grasping inherent or truly existing self. We all started from there. And then from anger, and then many other negative emotions arises, you know, resentful, grudges, hatred, from anger, then grudges, resentful, and hatred arise. From attachment, then, you know, greediness, miserliness, jealousies, and so forth, many other negative emotions, feeling arises.
Okay,
Yes.
on the basis of what is a transitory
Collections view, the view of transitory collection.
So then the idea of the self arises on the basis of the transitory collection is the basis of that.
Yeah, you can say that your aggregates is the basis of yourself. Yeah. So you see your body or your experience, your mind on the basis of that, then there is a sense of self. And that is not a problem when you have a sense of self itself. The problem is when there is then there's not only there is sense of appearing as a self, but there is appearance of inherently or existing or independent existing self. And that itself is not a biggest problem. It's appearing on that, but then grasping and clinging to that as an inherently or independent existing self, that is the biggest problem. Because one can have appearance of that, but one might not have grasping to that. Then it doesn't become a big problem. It is still obscuration, but it is not a delusions, you know, the fundamental ignorance. And so in our cases, not only there is appearance, but on the top of appearance, then there is that grasping. And so that become problems. Even the bodhisattvas and even the arhat, they still have that appearance, but they don't have the grasping, you know. Yeah. And so also conceit arises on observing that self. So pride, you know, sense of pride arises by focusing on observing this, that kind of inherent existing self. And that very self is held to be permanent. And then we hold that as either permanent or annihilated and is viewed as self and so forth. And again, that aggregate is viewed as self when it is not the self. It's the basis of the self, but it's not the self. The aggregate is self. The aggregates are the basis for the self, but it is not a self. But viewing that as a self, you know, and sometimes we do that. We often do that, you know. You know, your mind aggregates, for example, not feeling well. Then you say, "I'm not feeling well," isn't it? Your body is aging, and then we say, "I'm aging." Or your body has pain, and you say, "I have a pain." So we relate and grasp as though the aggregate is the self. Sometimes, yes, please.
In everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm able to recognize that I'm feeling separate and it's me and you, some self-talk would be helpful, I think, but just saying, oh, but there is no you or me. I mean, that doesn't seem like it will hit home. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Is there another way to think about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you know, one way of doing is, I think, focusing on meditating, reflecting, contemplating on how we all are same, you know, even though there are external differences, we might look different, we might have different background, we might have different culture, different way of thinking, and all of that, but basically, we all are human. We all are human, or we all are sentient beings, have same kind of innate wish to be happy and not to suffer. And we are not different, and everyone has the right to be happy and not to suffer. And everyone has the potential to be happy and not to suffer. So connecting on that level, you know, if we can really feel that, then we wouldn't feel the difference and separate that way. At the moment, I think, you know, we focus on the differences instead of focusing on that the same, that oneness or sameness of that. We focus too much on the differences, you know, and I think that is why, because we focus too much on differences, then that is why we feel more distant and more gap. Yeah. So I think, oh, we have to stop. Sometimes I get confused with 8:15 and 8:30. I was thinking still is 8:30. Okay. So we can do the dedications.
$235.
For this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more.
244. Short, long life prayers. First for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and then for Lamas of the Rinpoche.
Yahweh Kowe Shinkam De Pendan dewa malu jungwe ne Chere senwa tenzin jaso ye Shabe site pat tenjo chi Changshin changgun yawe tenzin jongpewe Kunso topo zwe Choson kowe lemon tuju Pada sodoje wendo shakten sho. So I just wanted to say there is a request from the Department of the Tibetan government to recite Om Mani Padme Hum as much as possible and dedicate for His Holiness Dalai Lama's good health and longevities, and also to recite this prayer, the prayer that's simultaneously fulfill all wishes of His Holiness as much as possible. So, and as well as the name mantra of His Holiness Dalai Lama. So this one was I just saw 274. And then yeah, I guess in Lama Choba we must have His Holiness Dalai Lama's name mantra in that Lama Choba, in that yeah, you can send or email that, just that part. So yeah, astrology wise, I think this is the obstacle year for His Holiness longevity. Every 13 years it comes one, you know, and so the Tibetan government did some definition observation with some of the teachers, Lama, and oracle Nechungs, and that was the advice given, and so if you can do yourself as much as you can every day and dedicate, that will be nice. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Good night. Thank you.